A millionaire lived in mourning, sad for his little daughter, until he was touched by the little daughter of the cleaning lady on Christmas night. Subscribe to the channel and comment where you are watching from. The silence of Christmas Eve in Malibu was broken only by the distant sound of waves crashing against the rocks. In the penthouse of the most luxurious building on Ocean Drive, Richard Montgomery stood alone before a glass wall that offered a panoramic view of the golden beach and the endless sea. At 42, the hotel magnate bore the weight of an empire built with blood, sweat, and a calculated coldness that had transformed him into the business legend he was today. His grey hair, impeccably slicked back, contrasted with the dark eyes that once were warm but now reflected only the emptiness of a wounded soul. The custom-made white linen suit from an Italian tailor was wrinkled, a rare sign of carelessness in a man known for his obsessive perfection in every detail. His large hands, marked by 2 scars on the right hand, trembled almost imperceptibly as he held a glass of Scotch whiskey that remained untouched. The 500-square-meter penthouse was a sanctuary of luxury and solitude. Italian designer furniture was scattered throughout the integrated spaces, each piece costing more than many Americans would earn in a lifetime. The marble floor reflected the golden lights of the crystal chandeliers, creating an ambiance that should have been majestic but at that moment felt only empty and cold. The air conditioning system maintained the perfect temperature, but could not warm the ice that had settled in the heart of the owner of that place. In the center of the living room, a pile of presents had remained untouched for 2 years, colorful wrappings of all, shapes and sizes, some with bows already faded by time, others with papers beginning to yellow at the edges. Toy fire trucks, building sets, adventure books, superhero costumes, everything a 6-year-old boy could dream of. But that would never be opened. Those gifts were like colorful tombstones, constant reminders of a joy that had been brutally ripped from his life. "Ethan," Richard murmured, his hoarse voice breaking the silence like shattering glass. The name of his deceased son echoed through the empty room, mingling with the distant chords of a Christmas choir coming from St. Mary's Church, located just a few blocks away. The angelic voices sang "Silent Night" in English, but to Richard they sounded like a lament that pierced through the soundproof windows, stabbing his soul like sharp needles. 2 years. 2 years since little Ethan Montgomery was swept away by the turbulent waters of the Pacific Ocean when the family yacht collided with the rocks during a sudden storm. Richard had been in London, closing a billion-dollar deal that would expand his hotel chain into Europe. More money, more prestige, more power, while his son waited at home for them to decorate the Christmas tree that had never been adorned. Guilt was a parasite feeding on his sleep, turning every dawn into a personal hell. If I had been there, if I hadn't boarded that flight, if I had chosen to be a father instead of a businessman. The thoughts tortured him in an endless cycle of self-recrimination. His ex-wife, Marie, had moved to Paris after the divorce. She could no longer look at him without seeing the man who chose business over being present for their son's last Christmas together. The apartment was a fortress of glass and steel, protected by a military-grade security system and a doorman who had strict orders not to allow unauthorized visitors. Richard had isolated himself from the world, turning his home into a luxurious mausoleum where he could cultivate his pain in peace. The cleaning staff came during the day to keep everything clean and organized, but with strict instructions: do not speak unless addressed, do not touch the presents, do not make unnecessary noise. The sound of the doorbell pulled him from his dark thoughts. It was 8 o'clock on Christmas Eve, an unusual time for any work-related visit. Richard frowned, irritated by the interruption of his annual melancholy. He walked to the intercom with heavy steps, his Italian shoes producing metallic echoes on the marble. "Good evening, Mr. Montgomery," came the doorman's voice through the speaker. "The new cleaning lady is here. She said you authorized a special cleaning before the year-end break." Richard sighed impatiently. He had completely forgotten the instruction he had given to the administrative manager of his company to arrange for an extra cleaning of the apartment. He planned to travel to his beach house in Santa Monica in the coming days, trying to escape the Christmas memories that haunted every corner of that penthouse. "Send her up," he said curtly, hanging up the intercom and returning to the balcony. The last ray of sunlight disappeared on the horizon, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink that contrasted with the darkness that inhabited his soul. In a few minutes, he heard the private elevator open in the entrance hall of his apartment. Two shadows projected onto the marble wall, illuminated by the chandeliers. A woman of medium height, wearing a simple blue uniform and carrying a box of cleaning supplies, walked slowly alongside a small figure who bounced excitedly. Richard turned, ready to quickly dismiss the cleaning lady and return to his solitude, but what he saw left him momentarily speechless. The woman appeared to be in her 30s, with brown hair tied back in a simple ponytail and large eyes that conveyed a mix of determination and nervousness. Her features were delicate, but marked by the weariness of someone who works tirelessly to survive. The uniform, although simple and clearly worn, was impeccably clean. In the clean and past, beside him, a girl with curly hair and a bright smile held a small clay angel, decorated with a worn golden ribbon and glitter that fell along the way like tiny golden stars on the marble floor. "Good evening, sir," said the woman with a soft yet firm voice, making a slight bow. "My name is Anna Claire Smith, and I am the new cleaning staff for the company. I apologize for bringing my daughter, but I had no one to leave her with on this Christmas Eve. I promise she won't interfere with my work at all." Richard remained silent, observing the duo with an indescribable expression. The girl, completely oblivious to the tension of the moment, stepped forward and smiled with a spontaneity he hadn't seen in years. "Hi, Uncle. My name is Emily, but everyone calls me Em," said the child, with the characteristic pronunciation of a 7-year-old, swinging the clay angel. "Mommy said you live alone in this giant house. It must be very sad not to have anyone to talk to on Christmas." The name echoed in Richard's chest like a dagger. Emily, the feminine form of Ethan. His eyes widened, and for a moment the world seemed to spin in slow motion. The glitter falling from the girl's angel sparkled like golden snow in the light of the chandeliers, creating an almost magical atmosphere amidst the cold and formal environment of the penthouse. "Miss Smith," Richard began, his voice rougher than he intended, "I don't usually allow children in my home." Anna Claire felt her blood run cold. She desperately needed this job and had risked everything by bringing Emily. But looking at that imposing man, with his aristocratic features marked by deep sadness, she saw something beyond the initial coldness. She saw the pain of someone who knew loneliness all too well. "Please, Mr. Montgomery," Anna Claire said, her voice laden with a dignity that contrasted with her vulnerable position. "I have been working in cleaning for 15 years, and I have the best references. My daughter will sit quietly on the sofa with her drawings. I really need this job." Emily, sensing the tension between the adults, took another step toward Richard and extended the clay angel in his direction. "Uncle, this angel is for you. I made it at Aunt Mary's school," said the girl with an innocent smile. "The teacher said that angels protect sad people and help them become happy again. You seem like someone who needs an angel." The silence that followed was deafening. Richard looked at the small, imperfect angel, made with the inexperienced yet loving hands of a child, and felt something stir within his chest, something that had been buried along with his son 2 years ago. The golden glitter continued to fall, creating small galaxies on the marble floor. as three destinies intertwined on that Christmas Eve that would forever change their lives. Richard remained motionless for long seconds, his eyes fixed on the small angel that Emily was extending toward him. The clay piece was imperfect, with marks of tiny fingers still visible on the dry mass. But there was something deeply touching about that simple creation. The worn, golden ribbon was tied with the care that only children can have, and the glitter that fell created a luminous trail in the air. I accept, he finally said, his voice coming out softer than he intended. He extended his large, careful hands to receive the gift, taking care not to damage the delicate piece of child art. When his fingers touched the rough surface of the clay, a distant memory infiltrated his mind. Ethan, at 5 years old, bringing home a crooked ashtray made at school as a Father's Day gift, even knowing that his dad didn't smoke. Anna Claire let out an almost inaudible sigh of relief. Watching the interaction between her daughter and that mysterious man, she noticed something that few could perceive. Beneath Richard Montgomery's aristocratic coldness lay a deep sadness, similar to the one she herself carried since her husband's death. She recognized that pain because she lived it every day. Dear, let Uncle work and come sit here on the sofa," Anna Claire said, her voice carrying the authority of a mother mixed with affection. "I brought your colored pencils and sketchbook. You can make your Christmas cards while Mommy works." The girl promptly obeyed, but not before giving one more curious glance at Richard. "Uncle, you have a very beautiful house, but it's very empty. Where are your Christmas decorations? And your tree? Mommy always says that Christmas is more enjoyable with colorful decorations." The innocent question hit Richard like a punch in the stomach. He remembered the last Christmas tree he had set up, an imposing 3-meter pine, decorated by a team of professionals hired specifically for the occasion. Ethan had spent hours sitting on the Persian rug, playing with the leftover ornaments, inventing stories for each little Christmas figure. "Dad, when you come back from the trip, are we going to make star-shaped cookies?" the boy had asked. A promise that could never be fulfilled. "I don't usually decorate for Christmas," he replied dryly, averting his gaze to the view of the beach. "Miss Smith, you can start in the kitchen. Everything needs to be spotless." Anna Claire grabbed her cleaning supplies box and walked toward the open concept kitchen, discreetly observing every detail of the environment. The kitchen was a dream for any chef. Black granite countertops, state-of-the-art appliances, a central island that could easily serve 10 people. But everything was too pristine, as if it had never been used. The stainless steel refrigerator only contained imported mineral water, some overripe fruits, and take-out food containers that clearly came from expensive restaurants. "Mommy, look at the drawing I made!" Anna Claire had returned to work after the Christmas holidays, bringing with her a renewed energy and, inevitably, Emily. The girl, back to school at the local public school, spent her afternoons in the penthouse while her mother worked, gradually transforming that luxury mausoleum into something that began to resemble a home. "Good morning, Mr. Montgomery," Anna Claire greeted as she entered through the service door, carrying a thermal bag that exuded a delicious aroma of homemade bread. "I brought some corn muffins I made last night after my shift at the bakery. I thought you might like to try them." Richard, who was sipping his Italian espresso while reading financial reports on the balcony, looked up in surprise. It was the first time in years that someone had offered him homemade food. Meals always came from 5-star restaurants or were prepared by private chefs, hired for special occasions. "You didn't have to go through the trouble, Mrs. Smith," he replied, but his voice lacked its usual coldness. "Just leave it in the kitchen. Maybe I'll try it later." "Hi, Uncle Richard," Emily shouted, bursting in like a whirlwind of joy. In the 15 days since Christmas Eve, the girl had taken the liberty of calling him by his first name, a familiarity he surprisingly did not discourage. "Look what I brought today." The girl opened her pink backpack and pulled out a small card made of yellow cardstock, decorated with glued-on golden stars, and a message written in childlike neatness. "Today is a special day because you woke up." On the back, she had drawn a smiling sun with sunglasses, clearly inspired by the famous landmark in Virginia. "Every day, I'm going to leave a different little card for you," Emily explained with the seriousness of an adult. "Aunt Mary from school said that when we do caring things every day, a person's heart gets less hurt. It's like medicine, but made of paper." Anna Claire watched the interaction from a distance, torn between pride in her daughter and concern about crossing boundaries. She knew the world of the wealthy well, having worked in homes in the affluent areas for years, and understood that the closeness between employers and employees rarely ended well. But there was something different about Richard Montgomery. Beneath the armor of a successful businessman, she recognized the wounded soul of a father who had lost his child. "Gabby, let the man work in peace," Anna Claire murmured, starting to organize the cleaning supplies. "Go do your homework at the kitchen table." "You don't have to," Richard said, putting the reports away in a folder. "I can work in the office today." "She can stay in the living room." It was a small but significant concession. Anna Claire noticed the subtle change in Richard's behavior over those first weeks of the year. He had stopped wearing headphones when she was working, began making occasional comments about the weather or the news, and most importantly, he had removed the sheets covering some furniture in the living room. While Anna Claire worked in the master bedroom, a masculine space dominated by shades of grey and brown, with a king-size bed that clearly was used by only one person, she discovered details that revealed more about Richard's life. Framed photographs were turned down on the nightstands. A whole shelf of children's books remained untouched in a corner. And in the closet, among dozens of impeccably organized suits, a small tuxedo still hung on a hanger. "Mommy," Emily called from the living room, "Uncle Richard has a lot of toys stored in boxes. Why doesn't he play with them?" Anna Claire felt a knot in her stomach. "Don't touch anything that isn't ours, Emily. And stop asking questions about Mr. Montgomery's life." "But isn't it curious, Mommy? He's old enough to be a dad, but he doesn't have a child here. And he looks sad just like you do when you think about Dad Carlos." The girl's sharp observation echoed throughout the apartment. From the office, Richard heard every word and felt his chest tighten. Emily had made the connection he was trying to hide from everyone. He was a man who had lost his child, just as she was a girl who had lost her father. The difference was that she could still smile. Around 3 in the afternoon, while Anna Claire was cleaning the balcony windows with precise and experienced movements, Richard decided to do something he hadn't done in months: prepare a snack. He headed to the kitchen and hesitantly opened the thermal bag that Anna Claire had brought. The aroma of the corn muffins filled his nostrils, awakening memories of childhood at his grandfather's farm in Virginia. "Can I try one of those corn muffins?" Emily asked, having abandoned her schoolwork to watch him. "I don't think your mom would let you eat sweets before lunch," Richard replied, but he cut one of the muffins in half and offered a piece to the girl. The flavor was extraordinary. The moist texture and slightly sweet taste of cornmeal mixed with anise reminded him of his grandmother Teresa's kitchen, who made the same treats on a wood stove. For a moment, Richard was transported to a time when happiness didn't cost millions of dollars. "Is it good, Uncle?" Emily asked, watching his expression. "Very good. Your mum cooks really well. She knows how to make a lot of delicious things. Chocolate truffles, flan, chocolate cake, peanut brittle." The girl listed enthusiastically. "Before, when Dad was alive, she made sweets to sell in the neighborhood. Everyone wanted to buy them. But then she only works for others." The information planted a seed in Richard's mind. Anna Claire was a talented baker, reduced to working as a cleaning lady out of necessity, a social injustice that he, with all his resources, could easily correct. But he knew that direct offers of help could be misinterpreted or hurt the pride of that warrior woman. "Emily," he called. From the balcony, Anna Claire called, "Come here and help Mom dry these pictures." The girl ran over to help, and Richard took the opportunity to observe mother and daughter working together. Anna Claire had removed the sheets from several framed photographs scattered around the living room. They were portraits of Richard at social events, business awards, travels around the world, a life documented in perfect poses and formal smiles. But in all the photos from the last few years, he was alone. "Uncle Richard, don't you have a picture with your family?" Emily asked with innocent curiosity. The silence that followed was heavy with tension. Anna Claire immediately stopped cleaning, realizing that her daughter had touched on something delicate. Richard remained still in the kitchen, his hands clenched around the coffee cup he had forgotten to drink. "Gabby, that's not our business," Anna Claire gently reprimanded. "I had a family," Richard finally said, his voice low and controlled. "But sometimes families break apart." Emily processed the information with the seriousness of a little philosopher. "Like what happened to ours when Dad died?" "Yes," Richard replied after a long pause. "Just like what happened to you." It was the first public acknowledgement of his loss, the first time in 2 years that he admitted aloud that he had lost someone important. Anna Claire felt tears prick her eyes. She recognized that pain because she carried it every day in her heart. "Mum always says that when families break apart, we can build new families," Emily said naturally. "Not the same, but different. We can be your new family if you want." The simple and sincere offer from a 7-year-old struck Richard like lightning. He looked at Emily, her bright eyes filled with hope, and at Anna Claire, who was trying to disguise her emotion by focusing on her work. Two people who barely knew him, offering what he thought he had lost forever, the possibility of belonging to something greater than his own pain. "I'll think about your invitation," Richard said, bending down to be at Emily's height. "But know that I already consider you both very special people in my life." That January afternoon, as the sun began to set over Malibu, Richard Montgomery's penthouse had gained something that money could not buy: the hope that new beginnings were possible, even after the most devastating losses. The second week of February brought an unexpected change to the routine of the penthouse. Lucia Martin, the administrative manager of the Montgomery hotel chain, a woman in her 40s with ambitions as sharp as her 6-inch heels, decided to make a surprise visit to her boss's apartment. For years, she had nurtured romantic hopes regarding Richard, interpreting his solitude as an opportunity to get closer both professionally and personally. Lucia was the kind of woman who calculated every move like a chess play. With a degree in business from NYU and an MBA in New York, she had built her career step by step in the corporate hierarchy, always maintaining a calculated mix of professional efficiency and feminine charm. Her platinum blonde hair was always immaculate, her designer clothes were strategically chosen, and she knew every detail of Richard's personal and professional life better than he did. "I need to review some contracts with Mr. Montgomery," Lucia said to the doorman, adjusting the red Chanel blazer she had specifically chosen to contrast with the neutral decor of the apartment. "It's urgent." When the elevator opened to the penthouse, Lucia was confronted with a scene she was not prepared to see. Emily was sitting on the oriental rug in the living room, surrounded by sheets of paper and colored pencils, drawing intently while humming a children's song. Anna Claire was vacuuming the Italian leather sofas, moving with the familiarity of someone who knew every corner of that space. "What does this mean?" Lucia asked, her voice laden with barely concealed indignation. "Since when are children allowed in Mr. Montgomery's residence?" Anna Claire immediately turned off the vacuum, her face flushing with embarrassment. She recognized the authoritative tone of a superior and instinctively took a defensive posture, shielding Emily with her body. "Good morning, Ma'am. Mr. Montgomery authorized my daughter to accompany me while I work," Anna Claire explained, keeping her voice steady despite her nerves. "She doesn't interfere at all. She's always quietly drawing." "Verbal authorization is not valid," Lucia retorted, pulling out a tablet device and beginning to type furiously. "There is a strict security protocol in this building. Unidentified children represent a serious breach of that protocol." Emily, sensing the tension in the air, abandoned her drawings and ran to her mother. The presence of that elegant but clearly irritated woman reminded her of the social workers who appeared at their home after her father's death, always asking questions and threatening to separate her from her mother. "Mom, did we do something wrong?" Emily whispered, clutching the hem of Anna Claire's uniform. "No, my love, we didn't do anything wrong," Anna Claire replied, running a protective hand through her daughter's curly hair. "Do you have a specific problem with our presence here?" Lucia observed the interaction between mother and daughter with calculating eyes. She had worked for years to become indispensable to Richard, organizing his personal and professional life with military precision. The presence of that simple family in his penthouse represented an uncontrolled variable in her carefully laid plans. "The problem is that this is the private residence of the largest hotelier in the United States, not a daycare," Lucia said, her tone becoming progressively more acidic. "Moreover, from what I can see, you are making yourselves quite at home here. This is highly inappropriate." It was at that moment that Richard emerged from the office, drawn by the raised voices. He was wearing a white linen dress shirt and tailored pants, but was barefoot, a sign of relaxation that Lucia had never witnessed in all the years of her working with him. Lucy's hair was slightly disheveled, as if she had run her hands through it while reading, and there was a cup of coffee in her hand, regular coffee, not the gourmet espresso she always provided for him. "Richard, I didn't know you'd be here today," said Richard, clearly surprised by the unexpected visit. "Was there some emergency with the hotels?" "Richard, dear," said Lucy, softening her tone and approaching him with a smile that was meant to be warm, "we need to urgently discuss some international contracts, but first we have a delicate situation to resolve." Lucy gestured towards Anna Claire and Emily as if they were misplaced furniture. "This staff member has been bringing a child to your home every day. It's a serious violation of security protocols. I recommend she be dismissed immediately and that we hire a more reputable company." The silence that followed was tense. Richard looked at Emily, who was hiding behind her mum's legs with frightened eyes, then at Anna Claire, whose dignity remained intact even in the face of public humiliation, and finally at Lucy, whose eyes sparkled with barely concealed satisfaction. "Emily's presence here was authorized by me," said Richard, his voice taking on a cold tone that Lucy knew well. It was the tone he used to end unfavorable negotiations, and I see no reason for changes. "Richard, be reasonable," Lucy insisted, lightly touching his arm in a gesture she intended to be intimate. "You can't allow domestic staff to treat your home as if it were theirs. This sets a dangerous precedent. Besides, what kind of education is this child receiving, living in an environment where she doesn't belong?" The last sentence hit Anna Claire like a slap. Her eyes filled with tears of anger and humiliation, but she held her head high. She had faced social prejudice her whole life, but that didn't make the words any less painful. "My daughter is receiving the best education I can offer," said Anna Claire, her voice trembling slightly with contained emotion. "She is a well-mannered, intelligent and respectful girl, and I have always taught her that a person's worth is not measured by the size of the home they live in." "How romantic," Lucy scoffed. "But the reality is that there are social limits that must be respected. A child cannot simply decide she wants to live in a world that isn't hers." It was then that Emily, with the inexplicable courage of children who grow up too fast, stepped forward and looked directly at Lucy. "I don't want to live here, Mom," said Emily, her little voice firm, despite the evident fear. "I only stay here because my mum needs to work for us to eat, and Uncle Richard likes my drawings. He said I can stay." The child's brutal honesty created an absolutely awkward moment. Lucy realized she had underestimated the situation and that Richard would not react as she had expected. Over the years, she had learned to manipulate his professional decisions, but she had never dealt with her emotional life being invaded by strangers. "Lucy," said Richard, his voice low but heavy with authority, "I will be very clear. Anna, Claire and Emily are welcome in my home for as long as necessary. If this poses a problem for you, we can discuss a transfer to another department." The veiled threat did not go unnoticed. Lucy had known Richard long enough to know he did not bluff on personal matters. Her strategy to create conflict had clearly failed, and now she risked losing not only her closeness to him, but also her privileged position in the company. "Of course, Richard. If that's how you want it," said Lucy, forcing a professional smile, "but we will need to implement some rules to formalize the situation for the legal protection of everyone involved." "What kind of rules?" Richard asked suspiciously. "The child cannot roam freely around the house. She must be restricted to a specific area. The staff member needs to adhere to stricter hours, and any damage or incident will be the full responsibility of the employee," Lucy enumerated, regaining her professional composure. "These are basic property protection measures." Anna Claire felt her heart sink. Those rules would turn her daughter into a prisoner and make her job even more stressful. But she desperately needed that job. It was the best-paying one among her 3 jobs. "I accept the conditions," said Anna Claire, swallowing her pride. "Emily will behave impeccably." Richard watched the scene with conflicting feelings. On one hand, he didn't want Anna Claire and Emily to feel embarrassed in his home. On the other, he knew Lucy had enough power in the company to create bigger problems if she wasn't appeased in some way. "Very well," Richard reluctantly agreed, "but the rules apply only to professional aspects. In personal matters, Anna Claire and Emily remain my guests." Lucy nodded with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, tucked her tablet into her expensive bag, and headed for the door. "I'll be keeping an eye on the situation," she said, making sure everyone heard. "For your own protection, Richard." After the elevator closed, taking Lucy away, the penthouse fell silent. Emily was still hiding behind her mom, and Anna Claire discreetly wiped away a tear that had escaped. Richard felt guilty for exposing those 2 people to a humiliation they didn't deserve. "I'm sorry for what happened," said Richard, approaching them. "Lucy she worries too much about protocols." "It wasn't your fault, Mr. Montgomery," replied Anna Claire, trying to maintain her dignity. "I knew our presence here could cause problems. Maybe it's better if I look for another way to resolve the situation with Emily." "No," Richard said firmly. "You both stay, and Lucy will have to get used to that." That afternoon, as Emily drew more quietly than usual and Anna Claire worked with tense movements, Richard made a decision. He would not allow anyone, not even his most trusted manager, to interfere with the first moment in the peace that had been found in 2 years. But he also knew that he had created a problem that needed to be resolved carefully. Lucy Martin was not the type of person who accepted defeats quietly. March arrived in Virginia with its warm afternoons and sudden rains that refreshed the steaming asphalt. In the penthouse in Malibu, A delicate routine had been established between Richard, Anna Claire, and Emily, like a dance choreographed by mutual needs and unspoken affections. The rules imposed by Lucy created a constant tension, turning every spontaneous gesture into something calculated and monitored. Emily, now restricted to the living room area, had created her own little corner by the panoramic window. A low coffee table became her makeshift desk, where she did her homework, drew, and produced her daily cards for Richard. The girl had developed a meticulous routine. She arrived home from school at 2 in the afternoon, greeted Richard respectfully, settled into her designated space, and remained there until her mum finished working. "Good morning, Uncle Richard," Emily said that Saturday morning, handing him the card of the day. This time she had drawn a colourful boat sailing in blue waters, with the message, "Every shipwreck can become a new beginning." The choice of words impressed Richard. They were very mature for a 7-year-old. "Where did you learn that word, Emily?" "Shipwreck?" Richard asked, genuinely curious. "On TV, Uncle. There was a movie about a man who was stranded on an island after his boat sank. But in the end he was rescued and was happy again," the girl explained seriously. "My Portuguese teacher always says we can learn new words by watching movies with our parents. But since I don't have a dad, I watch with Mum when she's not too tired." The casual mention of her father's absence still hit Richard like a stab. He observed Anna Claire, who was carefully dusting the plants on the balcony, and noticed the fatigue in her slightly hunched shoulders. The 3 jobs were taking their physical and emotional toll. That week, Richard had made a decision that had been maturing for weeks. He called Anna Claire for a talk in the kitchen, away from Emily's curious ears. "Ma'am," he began, choosing his words carefully, "I would like to make a proposal. How about leaving the other 2 jobs and working only here? I can significantly increase your salary to make up for the difference." Anna Claire stopped drying the dishes and looked at him with a mixture of surprise and distrust. She knew very well how the world of the wealthy worked. Seemingly generous favors always came with implicit expectations. "It's very kind of you, Mr. Montgomery, but I can't accept," she replied, keeping her voice steady. "It wouldn't be appropriate. Besides, I like my independence. I prefer to keep all 3 jobs." "Why? It would be more convenient for you and for Emily. She wouldn't have to wake up so early. You would have more time together." "Exactly for that reason," Anna Claire interrupted, her cheeks slightly flushed. "Mr. Montgomery, you are very kind, but I don't want my daughter to get used to luxuries we can't maintain, nor do I want her to grow up thinking we depend on others' goodwill to survive." The polite but firm refusal surprised Richard. He was used to solving problems with money, and Anna Claire's resistance intrigued him and simultaneously increased his respect for her. "I understand," Richard said after a pause, "but know that the offer remains open." That afternoon, while working in the office, Richard heard a noise coming from the living room. He found Emily on her knees, on the floor, gathering scattered papers and trying not to cry. "What happened?" he asked, bending down to help her. "The wind from the window knocked all my drawings down," the girl explained, her voice trembling. "I had made a special surprise for you, but now it's all ruined." Richard helped gather the papers and noticed that Emily had created a kind of makeshift album. There were dozens of drawings organized in sequence, telling the story of a sad man who meets a girl and a woman and gradually smiles more on each page. "It's our story," Emily explained, showing the ordered drawings. "Look, here you are very sad, here you are less sad, and here you are almost smiling. I was making it to show that you are getting better." The simplicity and affection of that handmade project touched Richard deeply. Without thinking, he hugged the girl, the first spontaneous hug he had given to someone since Gabriel's death. "Thank you, Emily. It's the most beautiful gift I've ever received." It was in that moment of tenderness that Anna Claire found them. For a moment, she saw the scene that could have been a father hugging his daughter. With genuine affection, her heart ached with a mix of happiness and melancholy. "Mom!" Emily shouted, running to her. "Uncle Richard liked my drawings. Can I make more?" "Of course, my love," Anna Claire replied, avoiding Richard's gaze. There was something about that interaction that made her uncomfortable, not because it was inappropriate, but because it was too good to be true. That night, after Anna Claire and Emily left, Richard headed to the room that had belonged to Gabriel. For the first time in 2 years, he opened the door and entered the space preserved like a sanctuary. Everything was exactly as his son had left it: books scattered on the bed, toys organized on the shelves, a Yankees shirt thrown over the computer chair. On the child's desk, he found a notebook he had never seen before. With trembling hands, he opened it and discovered Gabriel's secret diary. The pages were filled with childish handwriting, recounting his days, his dreams, his worries as a 6-year-old boy. One specific entry made Richard collapse into the chair. "Today is Sunday, and Dad traveled again. He always travels. Mom cried a little but pretended she didn't. I don't understand. Why Dad doesn't want to stay with... I think he doesn't like me very much. I wish he wouldn't be sad all the time. I wanted him to find someone to take care of him when I'm not around, someone who makes him truly smile." The words of the deceased son felt like a prophecy or a posthumous blessing. Ethan, even at such a young age, had sensed his father's emotional loneliness and wished for his happiness. Richard cried that night as he hadn't cried in 2 years, but these were different tears, not just of pain, but of liberation. The following Monday, Anna Claire noticed a subtle change in Richard. He smiled when Emily handed him the card of the day. He asked about the girls' school. He complimented the lunch she had prepared, small gestures that indicated a gradual opening of the heart. "Mr. Montgomery," Anna Claire said during a work break, "can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course. Did you have children?" The direct question caught him off guard, but he didn't feel the usual piercing pain. "I did. One son, Ethan. He died 2 years ago in an accident." Anna Claire nodded in, understanding. "I'm sorry. I noticed the sadness. It's the same I feel when I think of Carlos." "How do you manage to move on?" Richard asked, genuinely curious. "For her," Anna Claire pointed to Emily, who was drawing intently. "When you have someone who needs you, there's not much time to sink into sadness, and, well, I believe those who have passed want us to be happy, not to carry guilt forever." That afternoon, Richard made a decision that would change everything. He picked up the phone and dialed Lucy. "Lucy, I need you to research some information about bakeries operating in Virginia. I want data on revenue, location, target audience. It's for a new investment project." "Investment in bakeries?" Lucy asked, surprised. "Richard, that's not exactly our market niche." "It's a personal project," Richard said, ending the conversation. "I want the report by Friday." As he hung up the phone, Richard looked out the window and saw Emily showing her drawings to Anna Claire in the building's garden. Mother and daughter were laughing together, creating a simple picture of happiness that he had forgotten existed. For the first time in 2 years, Richard Montgomery allowed himself to dream of a future that included other people besides himself. The seed of a plan was germinating in his mind, a plan that would honor Ethan's memory by helping others achieve their dreams. But first, he needed to understand Anna Claire's dreams better, and that would require patience and subtlety, something he was learning to have again. April brought an unexpected twist that would test the delicate harmony established in the Malibu penthouse. During a rainy autumn morning in Virginia, when the raindrops tapped insistently against the panoramic windows, the intercom rang with unusual urgency. Richard, who was sipping coffee while reading reports, frowned upon hearing the tense voice of the doorman. "Mr. Montgomery, there's a lady downstairs claiming to be your sister-in-law, Patricia Smith. She is with a lawyer and insists that she needs to speak with you urgently." The name Patricia made Richard stiffen instantly. His ex-wife, Marina's sister, had always been an ambitious and calculating woman who saw the Montgomery family as a source of social and financial prestige. Since the divorce, she had maintained sporadic contact with Richard, always with ulterior motives related to the family's business. "Let her come up," Richard said, resigned. He knew that Patricia wouldn't easily give up if she was stopped at the gate. Anna Clare, who was cleaning the shelves in the adjacent library, sensed the tension in Richard's voice and instinctively called Emily to her side. The girl was sitting in her usual corner, coloring a drawing of a family of goldfish when the elevator opened, revealing two imposing figures. Patricia Smith, at 50, was a woman of striking presence. Impeccably styled platinum blonde hair, a grey designer suit, discreet yet expensive jewelry, and a posture that radiated social authority. Beside her, a man in a black suit carried a leather briefcase and had the sharp gaze typical of elite tax lawyers in Virginia. "Richard, dear," Patricia said, walking toward him with calculated steps, "I hope you don't mind our unexpected visit, but Dr. Henry has brought some urgent legal matters that need your attention." Patricia's gaze swept the room and immediately fixed on Anna Clare and Emily. Her eyes narrowed like a predator that had found a vulnerable prey. Years of mingling in Virginia's high society had sharpened her ability to identify threats to the family status quo. "Richard," said Dr. Henry Smith, a renowned lawyer specializing in large fortunes, "I need to discuss with you some concerns the family has raised about your recent personal decisions." "What kind of concerns?" Richard asked, already sensing trouble. Patricia moved closer, lowering her voice as if sharing a painful secret. "Dear, we know you've been through very difficult times after losing Ethan. It's natural that during these periods of emotional vulnerability, certain people might take advantage of the situation." Anna Clare felt the blood run cold in her veins. She immediately recognized the tone and implication. She protectively hugged Emily, trying to shield her from what was clearly going to become an unpleasant conversation. "I'm not understanding where you are going with this," Richard said, his voice taking on a dangerously low tone. Dr. Henry opened the briefcase and took out some documents. "Mr. Montgomery, we have received information about an inappropriate closeness between you and your household staff. Specifically, there are reports that a cleaning lady and her minor daughter are practically living in your residence." "Who provided this information?" Richard asked, although he already knew the answer. "That's not the point," Patricia interjected quickly. "What matters is that this situation could compromise both your reputation and your assets. A woman in a situation of social vulnerability with a child to support. Richard, don't you realize that you could... Are you being manipulated?" Emily, who had perfectly understood that they were speaking ill of her mom, stepped out from behind Anna Clare and stood in front of the visitors with a courage that surprised everyone. "My mom is not manipulative," the girl exclaimed, her eyes shining with indignation. "She works so hard, takes care of me all by herself, and has never taken anything that isn't ours. You are bad people for talking about her like that." The silence that followed was awkward. Patricia looked at Emily as if she were an annoying insect, while Dr. Henry consulted his papers with evident discomfort. "See?" Patricia said, as if Emily's reaction confirmed her theory. "The child is already too comfortable here. This confirms our concern about inappropriate boundaries." Anna Clare could no longer contain herself. She stepped forward, placing herself between her daughter and those who were attacking her. "With all due respect," Anna Claire said, her voice trembling with suppressed anger. "You know nothing about me or my daughter. You don't know that I've been working since I was 15 to support myself. You don't know that I lost my husband and I'm raising a girl without anyone's help. And you certainly don't know that I would never take advantage of anyone's kindness." "Oh, of course," Patricia scoffed. "The honest and hard-working widow. What a touching story. But the reality is that you identified a rich and lonely man and found a way to get close to him through an adorable child. It's a classic con, dear." The explicit accusation made Anna Claire recoil as if she'd been slapped. Tears of humiliation began to form in her eyes, but she maintained her dignity, raising her chin defiantly. "Emily, grab your things," Anna Claire said in a controlled voice. "We're leaving." "No," Richard said, speaking for the first time since the accusations began. His voice was as cold as Arctic ice, and everyone in the room turned to look at him. "You are the ones who are leaving, now." "Richard, be reasonable," Patricia tried, realizing she had gone too far. "We are just concerned for your well-being. Family has a duty to protect." "Protect what?" Richard exploded, his composure finally breaking. "My money? My reputation? Did you care about me? When Gabriel died? When I spent 2 years locked in this apartment, drinking alone and wanting to die? Where was this family concern?" Dr. Henry tried to intervene. "Mr. Montgomery, we understand that you are emotionally involved, but we need to consider the legal implications. If this situation continues, other family members may question your ability to make sound financial decisions." The veiled threat was clear. They could try to declare him mentally incompetent to manage his fortune. "Are you threatening me?" Richard asked, his voice dangerously low. "We are offering preventive legal protection," the lawyer replied. "But if the situation persists, more drastic measures may become necessary." Emily, who had been following the entire discussion with wide eyes, suddenly ran to Richard and clung to his leg. "Uncle Richard, don't let them take my mom away," the girl pleaded, tears finally overflowing. "We haven't done anything wrong. Mom just wants to work, and I just want to draw for you." The image of the girl crying, defending her mother and clinging to him for protection was the last straw for Richard. He bent down, picked Emily up, and hugged her protectively. "No one is going to take your mom away," Richard said, looking directly at Patricia and Dr. Henry. "And now I want you to leave my home immediately." "Richard, you are making a mistake," Patricia warned, already heading for the door. "When this situation blows up in your face, remember that we tried to help. The only thing you tried to do was destroy 2 innocent people out of pure prejudice," Richard retorted. "And you can be sure that I will remember this when I review the family's investments in my businesses." The financial threat made Patricia pale. She knew Richard had enough power to cut the lucrative dividends that Marina's family received from the Montgomery companies. After the elevator closed, taking the unwanted visitors away, the penthouse fell silent. Anna Claire stood in the middle of the room, trembling slightly, while Emily was still in Richard's arms. "I'm so sorry," Anna Claire said, her voice breaking. "I never meant to cause you any trouble. Maybe it's better if I look for another job." "No," Richard said firmly, placing Emily on the floor but keeping his hand on the girl's shoulder. "Anna Claire, those people do not speak for me. You two are the best things that have happened to me in years. I won't let anyone destroy that." That afternoon, while Anna Claire tried to get back to her work routine and Emily drew more quietly than usual, Richard made a decision that would change everything. He picked up the phone and called his personal lawyer, not the family's Dr. Henry, but a professional he completely trusted. "I need you to discreetly investigate any legal actions against me involving mental capacity or estate management," Richard said. "And I want a complete report on all the people who have access to my personal information." War had been declared, But Richard Montgomery was not a man who backed down from battles. If they wanted to question his personal decisions, they would find out that he had enough resources to defend himself and protect those who truly mattered to him. That night, for the first time in weeks, Richard found Emily looking sadly out the window instead of doing her usual drawings. "What's wrong, little one?" "Uncle Richard, are those people going to separate me and my mum?" Emily asked with a frightening maturity for her 7 years. "Never," Richard replied, kneeling beside her. "I promise I will never let that happen." In that promise, made to a scared girl on a rainy April night, Richard sealed his commitment to a new family, one he chose out of love, not obligation or social convenience. The month of May brought a calm. It seemed apparent, but Richard knew it was just the eye of the hurricane. His mornings began to include long strategic conversations with Dr. Henry Lawson, his personal attorney for over 15 years, a trusted man who had navigated through all the divorces, mergers and crises of the Montgomery family. The meetings always took place in the office, with the door closed, while Anna Claire worked and Gabby did her homework. "Richard, I need to be honest with you," Dr. Lawson said during one of their in-person meetings on a Tuesday morning. "Patricia and the family consortium are really making moves to question your decision-making capacity. They've hired a private investigation firm to document the irregular situation in your home." "What kind of documentation?" Richard asked, feeling anger rise in his chest. "Photographs of the girl coming in and out of the building, your mother's work hours, your expenses that could be interpreted as inappropriate gifts for staff. They are building a case that you have been emotionally manipulated and that this affects your ability to manage a billion-dollar estate." Richard walked to the office window, watching Anna Claire watering the plants on the balcony with Gabby beside her, the girl helping to carry the small watering can he had specially bought for her. The domestic and harmonious scene brutally contrasted with the sordid legal maneuvers happening behind the scenes. "What can they really achieve?" Richard asked. "In the worst-case scenario, they could request a partial guardianship, claiming that you are under undue influence. This wouldn't strip you of all your rights, but it could place your financial decisions under the supervision of a family council," Dr. Lawson explained. "But Richard, they would need to prove that you are truly incapacitated, and that is very difficult. You continue to run your business with absolute competence." It was then that Richard decided to take an initiative that would catch everyone by surprise. "Henry, I want you to prepare 2 documents. First, a partnership agreement to open a bakery in Santa Monica. Second, I want to modify my will." Dr. Lawson raised his eyebrows, surprised. "Richard, any testamentary change now could be used against you. They will claim it proves undue influence." "Then let them," Richard said determinedly. "I will no longer live my life based on what others think or threaten to do." That same afternoon, Richard decided to investigate Anna Claire's life more deeply, not out of suspicion, but because he wanted to fully understand the woman he was falling in love with, a reality he had finally admitted to himself. Through a discreet investigator, he discovered details that profoundly impressed him. Anna Claire Smith, a culinary graduate from Estacio de Sá University and a postgraduate in hotel management, had owned a small bakery in the local neighborhood between 2018 and 2020. The business thrived, with a loyal clientele and high-quality artisanal products. Everything changed when her husband, Charles Smith, was murdered during a robbery on Main Street in December 2021. The report revealed that Anna Claire had sold the bakery to pay for funeral debts and support herself during the first months of widowhood. Since then, she had been tirelessly working 3 jobs. Early mornings at the Golden Bakery in the local neighborhood, 4 a.m. to 8 a.m., afternoons caring for Mrs. Johnson in the local area, 2 p.m. to 6 p.m., and nights doing extra cleaning jobs. Her total earnings barely reached 2 minimum wages. But what impressed Richard the most was discovering that Anna Claire had never applied for state benefits, had never sought charity from religious organizations, and had never been late on any payment. Her dignity and independence were not a pose. They were the authentic character of a warrior woman. "Gabby," Richard said one afternoon, when he found the girl drawing alone while Anna Claire worked in the bedroom, "can I ask you a question about your mom?" "Of course." "Uncle Richard," the girl replied, always excited about any conversation. "Has she ever told you what your lives were like before Dad Charles left?" Gabby's little face lit up with happy memories. "We had a really beautiful candy shop. Mom made the most delicious chocolate truffles in the world, and Dad painted the walls yellow because it was my favorite color. Every Saturday we made cookies together, and Mom let me lick the spoon." "And were you happy?" "Very happy," Gabby said with conviction. "Mom sang all the time while cooking. Now she only sings when she's making food. And for you, Uncle Richard, I think she likes you." The girl's innocent observation hit Richard like a revelation. He had noticed that Anna Claire hummed softly when preparing meals, but he hadn't connected that to her emotional state. That night, after Anna Claire and Gabby left, Richard made a bold decision. He headed to the Santa Monica neighborhood, navigating its steep hills and cobblestone streets until he found an empty commercial space on Main Street, right in the bohemian heart of the area. The location was perfect, an old 2-story house with large windows facing the street, a backyard, and a colonial charm that harmonized perfectly with the artistic atmosphere of the neighborhood. The "For Rent" sign swayed in the night breeze like an invitation from fate. The next day, Richard surprised Anna Claire with a proposal she could never have imagined. "Anna Claire, I need to talk to you about an investment I'm considering," he said during the lunch break when Gabby was at school. "Of course, Mr. Montgomery. How can I help?" "I'm thinking of diversifying my investments by entering the food sector. Specifically, I would like to open an artisan bakery in Santa Monica." Anna Claire stopped cleaning the kitchen counter, surprised by the topic. "It's an interesting sector, Mr. Montgomery. Santa Monica has an audience that appreciates high-quality artisanal products." "Exactly, and I need a partner who understands the business, someone with a culinary background, practical experience, and knowledge of the local market," Richard said, watching her reaction closely. Anna Claire fell silent, for a few seconds processing the information. Do you know about my background?" "I do, and I also know that you once had a successful bakery." "Anna Claire, I'm not offering charity, I'm offering a genuine business partnership. You would come in as the majority partner with 60% of the business." Anna Claire's hands began to tremble. "Mr. Montgomery, I don't have the capital to invest in a partnership." "Your knowledge and experience are the capital," Richard interrupted. "Anna Claire, can I be direct? In the past few months, I've tasted your home-cooked meals, observed your work ethic, and seen how you raise your daughter. You have something that money can't buy: genuine integrity and talent." Anna Claire sat down in one of the kitchen chairs, visibly emotional. "Why would you do this for me?" "Because you and Emily have given me back something I thought I had lost forever, the ability to care about other people," Richard said with brutal honesty. "But also because it's a good business. Santa Monica needs a quality bakery, and you have the talent to make it work." "And what if I fail? What if the business doesn't succeed?" "Then we'll try again," Richard said simply. "Anna Claire, you've rebuilt your life once after tragedy. Do you have the courage to try again?" That afternoon, as Anna Claire worked in silence, clearly processing the proposal, Richard received a call from Lucy. Her voice was tense and filled with bad news. "Richard, we need to talk urgently. Patricia was here today with that lawyer. They want access to the company's financial records from the last 6 months. They allege suspicions of mismanagement. And what did you say? That they need a court order for that. But Richard, they specifically mentioned expenses related to your personal life. How did you know? Richard smiled coldly. He knew exactly who had provided that information to Patricia. Lucy, from now on, you no longer have access to my personal bank statements. All financial reports will go through Dr. Lawson before they reach you. The silence on the other end of the line was revealing. Richard, this is a lack of trust after so many years. It's protection, Richard cut in. Protection against people who confuse professional loyalty with personal control. When he hung up the phone, Richard realized that the war declared by his family was just beginning. But for the first time in 2 years, he had something worth fighting for. And he had no intention of backing down. That night, Emily handed him a special card, a drawing of 2 houses side by side, one large and one small, with a colorful bridge connecting them. The message read, "The best families are made of love, not blood." Looking at that drawing, Richard understood that a 7-year-old girl had perfectly summarized the philosophy that would guide his upcoming decisions. Family is not who shares your blood, but who shares your dreams. June arrived in Virginia, wrapped in a blanket of morning fog rising from the sea and slowly dissipating over the hills of Malibu. In Richard's penthouse, a palpable tension had settled since Anna Claire accepted the bakery partnership proposal. The decision had been made. After 3 days of reflection, late-night conversations with Emily, and many tears of hope mixed with fear. "I accept the partnership," Anna Claire said on a Thursday morning while preparing Richard's breakfast. "But with conditions. I want a formal contract, with all responsibilities clearly defined, and I want to pay my share gradually, with the profits from the business." Richard smiled. It was exactly the response he had hoped for. "Dr. Lawson is already preparing the documents, and Anna Claire, you can call me Richard. Partners don't need formalities." It was the first time she called him by his first name, and the intimacy of that simple moment surprised both of them. Emily, who was having hot chocolate at the kitchen table before heading to school, observed the exchange of glances between the adults with the intuitive wisdom of children. "Uncle Richard, now that you two are going to work together, does that mean we're going to be a real family?" the girl asked with the brutal honesty typical of her age. The ensuing embarrassment was broken by the persistent buzz of the intercom. Richard frowned. It was only 8 in the morning, too early for professional visits. "Mr. Montgomery," came the nervous voice of the doorman. "There's a team downstairs. They say they're from social services and need to conduct an inspection of the apartment. They have official documents." Anna Claire instantly paled, clutching Emily to her. She knew that procedure all too well. The same people had shown up at her home after her husband's death, questioning her ability to raise her daughter alone. "Send them up," Richard said, his jaw tense. He knew that this visit was no coincidence. 5 minutes later, 3 people emerged from the elevator. 2 middle-aged women dressed in discreet, formal attire and a young man carrying a clipboard full of documents. The leader of the group, a grey-haired woman with metal-framed glasses, introduced herself with bureaucratic authority. "Good morning, Mr. Montgomery. I am Dr. Mary Foster, a social worker from Child Protective Services. We received an anonymous tip about a minor in an unsafe situation in this home." "What kind of unsafe situation?" Richard asked, keeping his voice controlled. "They claim that a child is being kept in an inappropriate environment, possibly being exposed to dangerous situations," Dr. Mary explained, consulting her papers. "We need to speak with the minor and assess the conditions of her stay here." Emily completely hid behind her mom, trembling. Anna Claire, on the other hand, lifted her chin with a dignity that impressed even the official visitors. "My daughter is not in an unsafe situation. Anna Claire said, her voice firm despite the evident fear. She accompanies me to work because I have no one to leave her with. It's a temporary and supervised arrangement. Ma'am, Dr. Mary consulted her papers. Santos, right? We understand your situation, but we need to check if this environment is appropriate for a child. According to the report, the minor spends long hours in a home where she does not officially reside. Richard stepped forward, his imposing physical presence causing the social workers to step back slightly. With what authority are you here? Where is the warrant for this inspection? Dr. Henry Rogers, the young man with the clipboard, nervously replied, Mr. Montgomery, in cases of child protection, Child Protective Services has the authority for preliminary investigations without a warrant. We are fulfilling our legal duty. And I am fulfilling my right to protect my home and my guests, Richard retorted. You have 10 minutes to ask your questions and leave. Dr. Mary turned directly to Emily, who was still hiding behind Anna Claire. Sweetheart, can you come talk to me? We just want to know how you feel here. I don't want to talk to you, Emily murmured, gripping her mom's skirt tighter. We haven't done anything wrong. No one is saying you did anything wrong, said the second social worker, a younger woman with a supposedly gentle tone. We just want to make sure you are safe and happy. It was then that Emily, with the inexplicable courage of children who feel threatened, stepped out from behind her mom and stood in front of the adults. I am very happy here, she exclaimed, her eyes shining with tears. Uncle Richard is nice to me. My mom works hard, and I do my homework every day. You came here because someone lied about us. The girl's sharp observation caused evident embarrassment among the social workers. Dr. Mary took some notes and walked around the apartment, observing every detail. The low table where Emily did her drawings, the colourful cards stuck to the refrigerator, the organised corner with the girl's school supplies. The child seems well and cared for, and the environment is clearly appropriate, Dr. Mary murmured to her colleagues. I see no signs of neglect or exposure to risks. But what about the issue of irregular housing? Insisted Dr. Henry. The minor does not officially reside here, but spends most of the day at the location. It was then that Richard made a decision that surprised everyone. Actually, that is about to change. Anna Claire and Emily are going to officially move here next week. The silence that followed was absolute. Anna Claire stared at him in total shock. They had never discussed such a possibility. Emily jumped for joy, clapping her hands, but was quickly silenced by her mom. Richard, we never, Anna Claire began, but he interrupted her with a firm look. Anna Claire is my new business partner, Richard explained to the social workers. We are going to open a bakery together, and it makes sense for her to live here to facilitate our business projects. Emily will have her own room, enrollment in a nearby private school, and all the stability a child needs. Dr. Mary carefully noted everything. Mr. Montgomery, this sudden change, doesn't it seem a bit convenient? Just when we received the report? The business decision was made last week, Richard lied easily. You can check with my lawyer, Dr. Henry Lawson. The contracts are already being prepared. After another 20 minutes of questions and checks, the social workers left seemingly satisfied, but they left a clear warning. They would return in 2 weeks for a follow-up inspection. When the elevator doors closed, the apartment fell silent. Anna Claire was visibly shaken, Emily confused by the whole situation, and Richard trying to process the magnitude of the decision he had impulsively made. Richard, Anna Claire finally said, you can't make decisions about our lives without consulting us, and you can't lie to authorities just to protect us. I know, Richard admitted. It was impulsive. But Anna Claire, the offer is real. You and Emily are welcome to live here. Not out of obligation or to solve bureaucratic problems, but because you turned this house into something it wasn't 2 years ago. A home. Emily, who had been following the conversation closely, ran to Richard and hugged his legs. "Uncle Richard, does this mean I will have my own room? And can I decorate it with my drawings?" "You can decorate it however you want, little one," Richard replied, picking her up, "but only if your mum agrees." Anna Claire walked to the panoramic window, watching the beach of Malibu stretch infinitely before her. The decision she needed to make would change everything, for better or worse. Only time would tell. "I need time to think," she finally said. "It's a huge change, Richard. For all our lives." "Of course," Richard agreed. "But Anna Claire, know that, regardless of your decision about living here, our partnership in the bakery remains firm, and my commitment to protect both of you as well." That afternoon, while Anna Claire worked more quietly than usual and Emily drew colourful houses with happy stick families, Richard wondered if he had acted correctly. Imposing his protection on two people who value their independence so much could be both an act of love and a devastating mistake. But one thing he knew for sure: he would not back down an inch in the war they had declared against him. If they wanted to use Emily as a weapon, they would find out that Richard Montgomery was capable of fighting tooth and nail to protect those he loved. That night, Emily's last drawing showed 3 figures holding hands under a rainbow with the message, "The best families are born from the heart, not from blood." For the first time, Richard allowed himself to dream that the family drawn by a child could become a reality. July brought to Virginia its coldest days, with biting winds sweeping the Malibu shoreline and making the waves crash forcefully against the rocks. In Richard's penthouse, a decision had been made after a whole week of nighttime conversations between Anna Claire and Emily, discussions that Richard respectfully did not interfere with, although he could hear the low murmurs coming from the living room when they thought he was asleep. "I accept your proposal," she said. "Why are they so mean to you?" asked the girl, tears in her eyes. "Because sometimes people don't like it when others are happy, my love," replied Anna Claire, stroking her daughter's hair. Richard approached them, feeling guilty for exposing Anna Claire and Emily to yet another humiliation. "Anna Claire, I'm so sorry. I should never have allowed this to happen in our home." "Our home?" Anna Claire repeated, looking at him with an indescribable expression. "Our home," Richard confirmed. "If you accept me, if I can prove that I deserve to be part of this family." That night, after Emily fell asleep in her new room, Anna Claire and Richard had the most honest conversation of their lives. Sitting on the porch, watching the lights of Malibu reflect on the dark sea, they finally talked about feelings that had been growing for months. "Richard," Anna Claire said, "I need you to understand one thing. I didn't come into your life seeking salvation. I came seeking work. What happened between us? That was unexpected. For me too." "It was unexpected for me too," Richard admitted. "Anna Claire, for the past 2 years, I felt dead inside. You brought me back to life. But I understand if this is all happening too fast." "It's not about the speed," Anna Claire said. "It's about sincerity. Richard, are you sure your feelings for me aren't just gratitude? Or an attempt to replace the family you lost?" The painful but necessary question made Richard reflect deeply. "Can I be completely honest? In the beginning, maybe there was a bit of that. Emily reminded me of Ethan and you, showed me how it was possible to be strong after loss. But Anna Claire, what I feel for you now is real. It's love. Love for the warrior woman you are, for the dedicated mother, for the honest person I've come to know." Anna Claire fell silent for long minutes, watching the waves break on the beach. "And me? Am I sure I'm not falling for the security you represent, for the father that Emily never had?" "You're too strong to fall for just security," Richard said. "Anna Claire Smith, you rebuilt your life with your own hands. You don't need me to survive, but maybe we need each other to be truly happy." That night, for the first time, they kissed. A gentle kiss, laden with months of repressed tension and unspoken feelings. A kiss that sealed not only the love between two wounded adults, but the birth of a chosen family built on foundations of respect, affection, and renewed hope. The next day, Emily found a different card on the kitchen table, not from her to Richard, but from him to her. The drawing showed a large heart with 3 people inside, and the message read, "Thank you for teaching me that families are built with love, not rules." The battle against that improvised family was far from over, but for the first time, Richard, Anna Claire, and Emily would face the challenges united, as a true family. December arrived in Virginia, bringing with it the humid warmth that precedes summer and the nostalgic magic of Christmas. In the penthouse of Malibu, now officially the home of the Montgomery Smith family, a complete transformation had occurred in the 5 months since Lucy's departure. The walls that once displayed only cold contemporary art now boasted an eclectic mix, paintings by renowned artists sharing space with lovingly framed drawings by Emily, photographs of the new family in everyday moments, and an entire wall dedicated to the progress of the bakery, Sweet New Beginnings, in Santa Monica. The bakery had become an unexpected success. Anna Claire, working as a chef and manager, had created a welcoming environment that quickly became a gathering place for the artistic and intellectual community of the neighborhood. Her specialties, gourmet chocolate truffles, Pernambuco roll cakes adapted to local tastes, and an exclusive line of vegan sweets, attracted customers from all over the city. Richard, initially a silent partner, found himself passionate about the creative process of building something from scratch, actively participating in strategic decisions and even helping with customer service on weekends. "Dad Richard," Emily said one Saturday morning, using the title she had naturally adopted after the official adoption request was filed in September. "Today is Christmas Eve again. Do you remember last year when I gave you the little angel?" Richard smiled, unconsciously touching the small clay angel that now permanently sat on his work desk. "I remember perfectly, my little one. That was the day that changed our lives forever. And today we're going to make our first real family Christmas tree," Emily announced, bouncing around the kitchen where Anna Claire was preparing ingredients for the Christmas sweets they would distribute to the staff of the Montgomery hotels. The family had grown unexpectedly. Dr. Lawson, who was initially just Richard's lawyer, had become a close friend and informal advisor to the family. Mrs. Johnson, the elderly woman Anna Claire cared for in the local area, had moved into an apartment in the same building as the penthouse after discovering she was alone in the world. Richard secretly subsidized the costs, but allowed Anna Claire to maintain her dignity by continuing informal care. And more recently, Carlos Henry, a 19-year-old pastry chef who had lost his parents in an accident, had been professionally adopted by the family, living in the apartment above the bakery and learning the craft from Anna Claire. But Christmas Eve 2024 also brought an unexpected surprise that would once again test the solidity of that family built with love and determination. The intercom rang at 3 in the afternoon, interrupting the Christmas tree decorating session, an imposing 2-meter pine that Emily was adorning with a mix of expensive ornaments and handmade decorations she had made at school. "Mr. Montgomery," came the hesitant voice of the doorman, "there's a lady here who says she's your ex-wife, Marina Smith. She's crying a lot and insists that she needs to speak with you urgently." The silence that followed was thick with tension. Anna Claire stopped arranging the Christmas flowers. Emily paused from hanging the ornament and Richard felt a knot in his stomach. Mary had disappeared from his life after the divorce, moving to Paris and cutting all contact. "You can send her up," Richard said after a long pause, looking at Anna Claire for silent approval. "Do you want me to take Emily to the room?" Anna Claire asked, instinctively protecting her daughter. "No," Richard said. "This is our home, our family. We are not going to hide." When the elevator opened, the woman who emerged was a shadow of the Mary Richard had known. Too thin, with dull blonde hair, red eyes from crying, and a hunched posture that drastically contrasted with the elegant poise she had always displayed. She wore a simple black coat and carried only a small travel bag. "Richard," Mary said, her voice breaking, "I'm sorry for showing up like this, but I didn't know where to go." Anna Claire watched the scene with a heavy heart. She recognized a broken woman when she saw one. She herself had been in that state after Carlos's death. Instinctively, she headed to the kitchen to prepare tea, giving privacy to the ex-spouses while remaining close in case she was needed. "Mary, what happened?" Richard asked, keeping a respectful distance but showing genuine concern. "I messed everything up, Richard. Everything," Mary said, collapsing onto the sofa where Emily used to do her drawings. "The marriage with Frank didn't work out. I lost all the divorce money in bad investments. I'm alone in Paris, without money, without friends, without family. And today is Christmas Eve, and I could only think about our Ethan." The mention of their deceased son made Richard sit heavily in an armchair. Emily, sensing the gravity of the situation, quietly approached and sat on the arm of Richard's chair, offering her presence as support. "Mary, I'm so sorry you're going through this," Richard said sincerely, "but why did you come to me? I thought you wanted to keep your distance from everything that reminded you of Ethan." "Because I discovered something terrible," Mary said, tears starting to roll again. "Richard, Patricia, she called me last week telling me about your new situation. And in the middle of the conversation, she let slip something that terrified me." "What was it?" Richard asked, sensing that the revelation would be significant. "She said she always knew that Ethan wasn't your biological son." The silence that followed was absolute. Anna Claire almost dropped the tray with the tea. Richard turned pale, and even Emily sensed that something very important had been said. "What are you saying, Mary?" Richard asked, his voice coming out as a whisper. "I never had the courage to tell you, but during our marriage, I had an affair. Brief, foolish, insignificant. When I got pregnant, I assumed it was your child. Ethan was born looking like me, so I never questioned it. But Patricia, she always suspected, and apparently she did a DNA test with strands of Ethan's hair without telling me." Richard stood up abruptly, walking to the window. The revelation was devastating, but in an unexpected way, not because it changed his love for Ethan, but because it meant that his family had known about the doubt for years and had never mentioned it. "Why are you telling me this now?" Richard asked, still facing away. "Because Patricia said she would use this information against you in the proceedings, that she would prove that you have always been an easy man to deceive by women, that your new family is just a repetition of the pattern," Mary explained, sobbing. "Richard, I came here to warn you, but also to ask for forgiveness, for everything, for the betrayal, for the lie, for running away when you needed support the most." Anna Claire cautiously approached, offering tea to Mary and sitting on the sofa beside her. "Mary, can I ask you a question? Do you still love Ethan as your son?" "Of course. He was my baby, regardless of any DNA," Mary replied immediately. "And you, Richard?" Anna Claire turned to her husband. "Do you still love Ethan as your son?" "Always," Richard replied without hesitation. "DNA doesn't create paternal love. Living together, caring, shared moments create it. Ethan was my son in every way that matters." Emily, who had been following the entire conversation attentively, slid off the armchair and walked over to Mary. "Aunt Mary, do you want to see the room that was Ethan's? Dad Richard showed me once, and there are lots of beautiful pictures of you two together." The girl's innocent offer broke Mary's last resistance, and she began to cry convulsively. Anna Claire instinctively hugged her, a mother comforting another mother who had lost her child. "Mary," Richard said, returning to the group, "you can stay here as long as you need. I won't abandon you in a situation like this, regardless of our past." "Richard, I can't," Mary began. "Yes, you can," Anna Claire interrupted, surprising everyone. "Mary, you are Ethan's mother. That makes you family, and families take care of each other." On that Christmas Eve, for the second time in 2 years, the Montgomery Smith family unexpectedly grew. Mary would stay in the guest room indefinitely, working to rebuild her life with the support of people who should have been her rivals but chose to be her family. At the Christmas dinner, prepared collectively in the penthouse kitchen, 5 people sat at the table: Richard, Anna Claire, Emily, Mary, and Dr. Lawson, who had been invited not to spend Christmas alone. The conversation flowed naturally, punctuated by memories of Ethan that Mary shared fondly, stories from the bakery that Anna Claire told enthusiastically, and plans for the future that included a rehabilitated Mary integrated into the new family dynamic. "Dad Richard," Emily said during dessert, "can I ask a question?" "Of course, my little one." Ethan would have liked our family." Richard looked around the table. At Anna Claire, who had become his life partner, at Emily, who had brought light back into his world, at Mary, who despite all her mistakes was trying to start anew, at Dr. Lawson, who had become the grandfather the girl had never had. "I believe," Richard said with conviction, "that Ethan would be very happy to know that we managed to create a big family, full of love and second chances. He was always a generous child. I'm sure he would approve of everyone at this table." That night, when everyone had already retired, Richard found one last card from Emily on the nightstand. The drawing showed a table with many people around it. Some he recognized as representations of the current family. Others seemed to be people who would come in the future. In the center of the table, an empty place was marked with a golden star. Below, the message read, "For Ethan, who is always with us in our hearts." Looking out the bedroom window at Malibu Beach, where fireworks began to be launched in early celebration of Christmas, Richard realized he had achieved something he thought impossible, honoring the memory of his lost son by building an even bigger, more diverse and stronger family than any blood tie could create. The bakery was thriving, Emily was growing. Up happy and loved, Anna Claire had found not only love but also the professional fulfillment of her dreams, and Mary was slowly rebuilding herself. And he, Richard Montgomery, had learned the most important lesson of his life. True wealth is not measured in bank figures, but in the number of people we choose to love and who choose to love us back. On Christmas Eve 2024, exactly 1 year after that first transformative meeting, the Montgomery Smith family was complete. Not because nothing would change anymore, but because they had learned that true families are living organisms capable of growing, adapting, and strengthening with every new challenge life presents. Leave your like, subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and if you watched until here, comment, "I watched until here," and share your opinion about this story. Oh, and don't forget to watch the next video that appears on the final screen. It's very exciting.